last but not least, we have Roma Britnell. Roma's looking at basically, I can sum it up by saying the relationship between people who need to be fed and the people who are the producers of that food, and how the two are going to coexist into the future. Welcome, Roma.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow members of Nuffield, and a special warm welcome this afternoon also to our international guests. I'd like to begin my presentation this afternoon by sharing with you that the aim I set out to achieve by undertaking a Nuffield Scholarship is well on the way to being achieved. I can't say that it's completed. In fact, the journey that Nuffield has enabled for me, even in the infancy of this journey, is proving to me to be a lifelong journey of development and growth, and therefore I'm only at the beginning from what I can see of this continuous affair. My aim was to broaden my understanding and knowledge of agriculture so that I can be a more informed and valuable advocate and representative when called upon. I'd like to thank my sponsor Landmark and the Nuffield organisers and the general Nuffield family who understand the value of experiencing the world and the benefit this brings. It's difficult to put into words, adequate words that is, but this experience is truly a unique and significant experience. So I'm going to begin my presentation with a bit of background initially, of me and my family, and then I'll report to you my findings of my research. I think this will help you understand why I wanted to undertake this scholarship. Our story begins as when we were a young married couple, and our aim was fairly simple to us. We wanted to have kids and bring them up on a farm we planned to own. Neither of us had family financial backing, nor did we have families on farm, but it still seemed a very simple plan to us. However, the long and the short of it is that for 10 years we worked fairly hard, saved very hard, and despite this were discouraged at every angle from trying to achieve our goal. The people who were discouraging us, their intentions were honourable. It was just that the image of agriculture isn't one that people think you can make a good financial decision by investing in, and even if we were able to invest in it, I think they thought it was unlikely we would pull it off. So, despite being discouraged, probably due to our naivety and I'm sure our pig-headedness, and just about at a point where we were about to give up, we fell quite by accident into the dairy industry. This was not a future that we had envisaged at all. Dairy, I'm afraid, was the agricultural pursuit of last resort in our minds. However, we found a progressive industry, one that was proactive environmentally, scientifically sound, and had a very defined career pathway. It was 1997 when we began share farming that property in Western Victoria, and 3 years later in 2000 we moved 20 minutes across the region and bought our first farm. It was a small run-down farm that milked 100 cows when we bought it, and it needed everything to be rebuilt. We also leased a third of the farm, and this is how we afforded to get in. We obviously had to milk far more cows than 100, and we used that as a way to increase our capacity to make that farm productive and be able to meet the debt that we'd taken on. We spent 5 years developing and growing that property's ability to perform. It was the year of deregulation, and as far as the media were concerned, it was the end of the dairy industry in Australia. And so there was a lot of discussion around us that we would go broke. But we surrounded ourselves with positive people who encouraged and supported us. We felt so pleased to be able to achieve our goal that we felt we had to thank the people who had built this great industry before us. People like Max Gelbart, who last night received an award from Nuffield for his generous work to the industry of Nuffield. Also, as someone I hold in great esteem, because he's one of the people who did encourage and support us and that I admire. So congratulations, Max, on that award. And it was for people like that that Glenn and I joined our lobbying organisation. And there were two reasons. One was to give back, and the other was to change the image of agriculture that I feel is holding back in the industry. 5 years later, land prices had increased, our equity position had improved, and we had established the farm. We recognised growth as an important element of continued success, and we bought our second farm. 9 months later, we bought a third. We did our homework, assessed the international operating environment that we sell our product into, and jumped in and had a go. We had challenges, and we learned a lot, and we made plenty of mistakes. But by 2006, just under 10 years from my first experience of touching a cow, we owned 1,000 acres, milked 1,000 cows, and employed staff to assist us. It was a busy and stressful, but rewarding time. On the slide behind me, you can see a few of the roles that I took on. And as you can see, from the roles, having a solid knowledge of agriculture was important. I also felt that it was really important to make sure that when I was involved off-farm, that I remained a very important and integral part of the family business and didn't lose sight of what was important, which was our business first and foremost. And of course, to make sure I didn't lose sight of the most important role in my life, and that is of being a mother. And that's my daughter Tess, who was a frequent member to industry meetings and helping me chair that meeting there. So you can see I was frequently being invited to sit on committees and being asked my opinion on all things agricultural. And whilst I was passionate and I'm very opinionated, it was also my responsibility to put some substance behind those opinions, and hence my desire to undertake the scholarship so that I could build on my knowledge. This leads me to my topic, and my topic is the challenges and opportunities that present themselves to Australian farmers. The rising demand for food and the predicted population increase, along with the diminishing resources available, create both a challenge and an opportunity. Just like Bill O'Keefe said yesterday, it's not all negative, there's always a positive. And I wanted to go away and gain a deeper understanding of what lay ahead. My travels took me to many countries, and I must apologise to the New Zealand in the room. I forgot to put New Zealand on the slide. My discoveries confirm that there is definitely going to be a great opportunity to make money from the sale of food caused by the increased demand from a hungrier and wealthier people. And the country that I visited that this was most evident in was Brazil. Now in Brazil in the last 10 years, 20% of their population have moved out of the slums like you see in the foreground in that favela to the cities behind. And this trend is not only going to continue to occur in Brazil, but it's also occurring in China and India. So it's along with that change, we're going to see people who are wanting to afford better choices from their foods. So that's more quantity and more different foods available to them. So the opportunities are definitely forthcoming, and this was discussed at length at the Contemporary Scholars Conference in New Zealand, which we did go to. But after hearing a lot of talk from many speakers right across the globe about the forthcoming opportunities, I was left wondering how farmers in particular are going to capture this benefit. So I then set about exploring this question, and this took me to countries like Ireland, Wales, England, France, Denmark, and I looked at, visited farmer organisations such as this one here in Northern Ireland, and I asked that question. I also visited small, medium and large family businesses. Some were value-adding, others were operating in niche markets, and many were looking at the popular and trendy farmers markets that we're seeing emerging even in Australia here. And I'm pictured here in these photos with several Nuffield scholars from around the world who opened up their doors and made my learning so much more valuable because of their generosity of letting us explore their businesses. On the top left-hand corner there, I'm pictured with John Elvis, who's the Sheriff of, not Nottingham, but the Sheriff of Bristol. And I did elongate that photo so I didn't quite look like Friar Tuck standing beside him. But down the bottom left-hand corner is Nicola Raymond's mother. Now this lady had never met me before, and she opened up her home, introduced me to all these other farmers around in the district, invited them all for dinner, a dinner party in our honour. And I then set up for us to visit all these other farmers around and explore their businesses. And over in the top right-hand corner is two people I'd like to say thank you to again, who have just arrived, literally just stepped in the door of a plane from Scotland, which is John and Kathy Campbell, who were mentioned earlier. And they too, to a group of 11 of us scholars, opened up their home, fed us like we were kings, and it was just incredible, and opened up their business and showed us so much. And down the bottom right-hand corner is another gentleman in the room who deserves a great vote of thanks from me and my fellow scholars, and that's James Black. James took us for, I think it was 2 days, around several businesses, and again, thank you, James. I can't see you, but I know you're out there. I also just want to mention while I'm on this slide that we were a really fortunate group to have many, many benefits from being Nuffielders and travelling the globe. But one of them was actually travelling with Rob Cook. And Rob will be reporting in March, and we're all really disappointed not to be catching up with Rob. He's one hell of a great bloke, and as Shannon said, you are more the poorer for not having Rob here to present to you. But we were really honoured as a group to travel with Rob, and here we are pictured there. Well, I was the photographer because I didn't have the brawn that the boys had, but they would lift him up and take him up onto places so that Rob could see just as much as what we all saw. And you know, the benefits were far great to us for having Rob with us, so it was fantastic. But I explored many business structures. But for the farmers of bulk commodities, like most of Australian farmers are, the things I was seeing, such as the niche markets and the value adding, didn't really apply. And given the future lies in being able to meet the demand through quantity, I was still left wondering how we, as farmers of a bulk commodity, are positioning ourselves. I did see evidence of corporates investing in nations who were producing commodities so that they could position themselves to benefit and be ready for the gain. But again, I saw little evidence of farmers working towards positioning themselves. In Ireland, UK, France and Northern Europe, I found farmers who were talking about the way to do this. And their belief, no surprise I'd say to Nuffield scholars, was through collaboration. And they cited the co-op model as the way to do this. It was held up as the only other way than niche markets and value adding to assist farmers to benefit from improving their position in the marketplace. I found, however, that the challenges that I found, and will now elaborate on, were contributing to the inability of particularly Australian farmers to be able to understand the importance of valuing collaborative behaviour. So my research into the challenges that I feel will potentially hold back the opportunities are able to be summarised and lumped together under the issue I will call the disconnect between the city and country. I interviewed Mike Taylor, the ex-chairman of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, as part of my research, and he said these words: "There is no country with a greater disconnect with agriculture than Australia." And I too concluded this. I saw evidence of this problem in all Western countries I visited. In California, I went to a meeting with the US Farm Lobbying Organisation where all the commodities came together and they were talking about the problem. And I felt like I was back in Australia doing exactly the same thing. And here were these guys coming together all talking about the problem, but I really wasn't hearing a solution. And I left that meeting quite disappointed because California is known as the food bowl of America. And these guys are right on the doorstep of Hollywood, where, you know, we're in the world of make-believe and altered reality. So if anyone has to face that great challenge of getting the city, who are quite disconnected, more informed, I thought it was them. So to see that there was no answer as far as they could see was quite a disappointment to me. I'm sorry, I'll just go back. That slide there, I think really depicts the disconnect that I'm talking about. That was in a supermarket in America, and I don't think I've ever seen a dog in Australian supermarkets. And sitting up in the trolley where my 2-year-olds used to sit just astounds me. But it does make us see that people are seeing animals as more human than we ever have before. And this also I saw in Paris when I was on an escalator, and there's a sign on the escalator about picking up your dog. I assume so it doesn't get caught in the end like the kids. You know, there used to be a sign in Melbourne, wasn't there? Don't let your kids' thongs get caught or something. Well, this was for the dogs instead, forget the kids. I was in England also when an 8,000 cow dairy was proposed for just outside London, and I watched with interest at the outcry. The poor understanding of the urban community around the world is not only evident in issues of animal welfare, however, it's also depicted in the environmental discussions we're seeing. And basically what really is going on is people are quick to assume, who aren't from country environments themselves, that farmers are doing something wrong. Before they're even ready to make an informed decision, they jump straight to the conclusion. And I think the photos here, one is a Californian 5,000 cow dairy that we visited. And, you know, it looks quite sleek and well run, and I'm pretty sure it was. And on the other side of the screen is the Mexican dairy family farm that I stumbled across. That guy was quite pissed as he was milking his cows that day. He had a lovely time chatting with me. But you can see this dairy is held together by hayband. Reminds me of the dairy when we first started, and we had to undo all the hayband before we could start doing up the dairy. But, you know, who's to say who's the better operator here? I didn't have the information at hand to be able to make a judgment, but it does depict that things don't necessarily are as they're seen. So people are no longer comfortable with images such as this one. We visited a few meat plants as we journeyed through across the world, and I think what was interesting was people are no longer able to look at something like a site like this and feel comfortable. And we were asked as a group, you know, before we went in, are we sure we're comfortable with going in through this? You know, it's something that might be quite confronting for us, and have we thought through the psychological aspect of what we're about to encounter? And I mean, as a little girl, I used to play, we used to have a race with killing the sheep, who could slit the throat fast, you know, and my brothers, it was a competition, and that wasn't unusual, it really wasn't. It sounds it now in today's world. So there is no understanding of the effort farmers put in to manage our flora and fauna. No knowledge of the farmers, the money that we contribute towards the research and evidence through science, ways that we can reduce our environmental impact, and the ways we can balance the care. We have to make sure we can balance between caring for an animal and then eating it. Some of the research that we saw here at CIMMIT that's been going on since the age of Roma Britnell, who was a scientist who revolutionised wheat production and he is actually claimed to be a man who saved more lives through his research, and he's an ag scientist, and we don't really hear the successes of such amazing people like that today. But what we're now seeing though instead is a general public whose views shape policy. And there are many examples that we can see that challenge farmers to remain viable at a domestic level, let alone be competitive internationally. And examples in Australia are decisions like the carbon tax. It's the epitome of what I'm just saying. Why put ourselves in a place where we can't even compete locally, let alone internationally? How does that help? And the tardiness and the untimeliness of the Murray-Darling Basin report, which I don't actually think has been released yet, and the very recent, and our complex industrial employment laws. All around the globe, we saw other countries being able to bring in labour that wanted to work, and were also not paid as much as our labour force, and we're trying to compete internationally with those sorts of conditions. And of course there's this emotive issue of the knee-jerk reaction the government made to the Four Corners report that stopped live export. To me, both sides of government are very straight up in saying that they're not going to interfere with free trade, but I'm not so sure if that's a true reflection of free trade when they come in and they just say, sorry, we're shutting down the trade. I'm not sure that that does reflect a government staying out of it. In Scotland, we got to taste the controversial food frogwa. I think I've pronounced it right. I don't think the two Aussies in the picture here behind me, Paul and Michael, will be at all disappointed if the animal activists get their way and we're no longer able to stuff the goose. Let alone Shannon, who'd walked out of the room to go to the toilet to spit out what was in his mouth. The readiness of our modern society. And we heard Helen yesterday talk about 10 million more people in Australia. I'm pretty sure that most of those people are going to want to live in Sydney and Melbourne. So our cities are going to start to look like this. And, you know, Laree talked about not being able to breathe. It was horrific. That, my friend, is a jungle. And, you know, people are going to live in that more and more in their cities around the world. So we are not going to get anywhere unless we start to face this problem, because those people think we're very unprofessional. But I did see a proactive approach in Canada, which I was very excited about. I attended the OFAC, Ontario Farmers Animal Conference in Canada, and they were developing a program which approached this problem very proactively and with a different psychology. Now the girl on the left there, very female, left I think, yep, she was a university student and she was the first speaker of the day, and she talked about her experience at uni. where all her friends had very little idea of what goes on the farm and how frustrated she was for that. We hear our university students saying the same thing here. My son's at Melbourne Uni and I'm already hearing that. It's his first year and he's coming home telling me some of these stories as well. The guy on the right there, he's a chap who has been looking at a way of approaching this though. Instead of jamming science down people's throat, as I do when I say, excuse me, but I look after my calves very well, I chew them within 12 hours and that raises their immunoglobulin level and blah. But then people turn off. He's talking about a totally different approach about we really care for our animals, we care for the environment. It sounds really obvious, but it's actually quite clever. And I'm hoping that internationally we can actually work together on this because whilst we have a big problem here and I'm really concerned about Australia, we need to do something internationally. The consequence of not understanding the value of agriculture can be seen in examples in other countries as well. And this article here from the Los Angeles Times discusses the 40% unemployment that resulted from the activists shutting down the Mendota region. Australia gains so much from the agriculture, and the ability for us to meet these challenges that we have with the environment does not become easier through reduced income and reduced skills, which shutting down a region results in. And I'm sincerely hoping we're not going to see that in the Murray-Darling Basin outcome. So the country-city disconnect is not just a warm and fuzzy discussion. It's a real issue requiring action. Farmers are being stripped of the confidence to plan, progress and function at every new challenge that's thrown upon us with the new legislation and changes. And this is a direct consequence of the disconnect. Many feel reluctant to believe in a future that sees profit, not pain. And this then reflects in their ability to work collaboratively and collectively and influence their future by investing in the supply chain. If our farmers are feeling despondent, and our piecemeal approach to challenges continues to erode our competitiveness, when the challenge of the increasing food demand confronts us, will we be prepared? We don't need to compromise our stance on free trade, but we do need to practice less haste and more caution. And we're not going to see any of this while we've got a community that feels the way they do about farmers being so unprofessional. But there is an answer. We need to invest in confidence. We need to develop a new culture in farming and at the same time develop a new understanding in society. The Australian Government has invested in agriculture over the years. Research has been done to improve farming and the environment, and farmers have been educated. Support personnel have even been funded to guide farmers through practice change. However, no investment has been made to bring society on this journey. The community has been left behind, and they feel farming is outdated and a threat to their landscape. Today's citizen is a concerned environmentalist. They want information about the landscape farmers are in charge of, and they want confidence that it's in good hands. So herein lies both our opportunity and our solution. We need to coordinate an across-commodity program, co-funded by government and farmers, enlightening the community of the impending food challenge and the role farmers are equipped to play in Australia to address this. This program will rebuild the reputation of the farming community and improve the impressions farmers have of themselves. The program will result in the word factory farming, for example, disappearing as societies develop a new respect for the systems we've developed and the rationales behind them. The red barn and the odd chook with a few cows that is the current romantic view community have of farming will be replaced with the reality of a dairy herd, for example, with many hundreds of cows. And people will understand the need for such systems and have confidence in the operators who run them. The community, again, will be able to differentiate between humans and animals and the differences and purposes of these. We need to be clear we want agriculture, and the first step is to develop a vision. My journey across the world has grown my knowledge, and I'd like to thank Nuffield, Landmark, and my fellow travellers pictured here on the slide, who made my learning experience so rewarding. I learnt as much from each individual one that I travelled with as I did from the speakers and those that I interviewed. They were a great bunch, and I really did get so much value out of travelling with them. But one of my biggest learnings from my Nuffield is just how great my family is. We now have a family board that we've set up to advise Glenn and I, the CEOs of our business, and this is a direct outcome of my Nuffield experience. But to do these things you have to have open minds, and Nuffield has done that not only for me but my family too. My husband Glenn has done a sterling job looking after the children and the farms whilst I've been travelling. It's no mean feat to do this, and I thank him and my children for the sacrifices they have made. I would like to conclude with, there is an opportunity, but to optimise it we need to build the reputation of farming with the community. Whilst the current situation continues, farmers are less inclined to strive, and we need positive and innovative individuals to solve the current challenge of feeding a growing, hungry world if we want to avoid civil upheaval that hungry societies cause. Thank you.
Roma, that was fabulous. I think we've got time for about 2 questions only, and I'm sure there are 100 more, but who'd like to be the first?
I just wonder, from your travels, do the answers come from outside or do the answers come from us?
We are the solution, not the problem, but unless we get involved and share with the world that we are in charge of the food that they need and find the ways to do that, we can keep sitting around rooms and talking about it for a hell of a long time yet. I think we've been doing it for about 30 years and it's time to stop discussing it and start coming up with a strategic plan.
Yes, Roma, Michael Hastings. Just wondering on how it's a very difficult concept for us to promote that we are going to be the food suppliers when a lot of the competitive advantage actually lies in other economies, and we see the supermarket chains now bringing cheaper food in to feed all of us. How do we actually promote that, number one, to our biggest customer, which of course is the supermarket chains, and the consumer that keeps saying they want to support the farmers, but then as soon as they go into the supermarket shelf, will quite happily buy that cheaper home brand?
Yeah, look, we've heard all that, and it's true. I do it. I buy cheaper bread. You know, I don't buy cheaper milk. That's because I'm a dairy farmer. But I think we've just got to stop saying the solution isn't in educating people, because the farmers market is a really good example. It is growing, and I'm not talking about us doing that. We're a bulk commodity that we're trying to sell right across the world. I think the answer lies in what Marie was talking about, what she was surprised that she saw in Brazil. She sees a very different, and so did I, government support. Now, it's not necessarily in subsidies, it's about government really getting behind agriculture and seeing agriculture as a way for that country to develop. Now, we've got to change the policymakers' views on the value of food and the role it will play. I know we've never been hungry before, but we do have the evidence to show that we will be hungry soon. And it does take about 15 years to get research from product to shelf. So we've got a really big impending challenge, and that's our opportunity. We've got a lot of cliches that we can throw around like that, scare the pants off them and get them thinking, hell, it's not just mining, that's important. We're getting a lot of income from that, but it is food as well. And Australia is well positioned to make a lot of money. Why the hell are these companies investing in Argentina if they don't think they're going to make money in 10 years' time? As a country, if we've got rid of all our skills, we've got rid of all our farmers' inspiration to strive, we're not well positioned for the future.
Roma, Rob Bradley from Tasmania. You mentioned very briefly about working collectively as cooperatives. I think you and I are probably a similar generation of farmers, and cooperatives really have been a bad word. All they've been is disasters generally, and if they haven't been disasters, they've been taken over by multinationals. And thinking that really cooperatives haven't been a good thing, has your thinking changed on that? And do you think working collaborative is some way that we as commodity producers can, without going down the value-added road ourselves, we can participate in that activity? Yep,
no, my impression hasn't changed. And I spent a lot of time examining the value of cooperatives, and what I've found is farmers in Australia, particularly dairy farmers, are very confused. They don't understand the difference between the cooperative principle and management, and what poor management looks like, and what boards that don't function effectively do to a cooperative. They're very different issues. So I really believe that we've got to start getting the emotive discussion out of cooperatives and take history out of it, start looking futuristically at the opportunities, what cooperative models are best for the future, and I actually wonder if we do need some government help in educating So actually getting some arenas of discussion happening that are actually far more or less emotive and more analytical, so that we can actually isolate what, and then show people, look, the research really does show that a cooperative run well is the most effective way for you as commodity producers to operate, because we're not going to interfere with free trade, so this is your only other way.